Ladies and gentlemen, if you would please, Representative Wiley's got an announcement for us. It's very important that we all be in this chamber as quickly as we possibly can. So we need to get underway here, but if you're in the break room, I'd like for you to be out here to be able to hear what's going on, and so that we can lend our support to the people of Wyoming. Okay, Representative Wiley, please.
Mr. Speaker, privilege of the floor.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Body, just before the noon hour today, there was reports of smoke coming out of the westbound tunnel in Green River, Wyoming. I've called home and I've looked into it. There are multiple incidents, multiple expected fatalities, and then the structure of the tunnel itself is being questioned now because of the fires. I'd like to take a moment of silence here for our first responders and the need of those folks and the folks today that probably don't get to go home to their loved ones. So if you would, thank you. Thank you.
I would ask Representative Haraldson if you would please pray for these folks and what's going on right now. If we could just lift those folks up in prayer. Were you able to hear what happened? Okay. We've got evidently multiple accidents inside of the what we call the Green River tunnels over there, and there's multiple loss of life, and there are EMS people that are there. They're concerned right now at this point that the tunnels are compromised, and that is exacerbating the problem. So if you could just pray for those folks that are dealing with that scene right now and the families and the loss, we would greatly appreciate it.
Absolutely. And you guys, I don't want to over spiritualize anything, but it's been a week. I mean, I don't know if you're aware, but our own Jamie Lean lost a member of her, not her family, but a friend this week. It just continues. We got a little Christian, now we've got this. And so God, we just come right now, and Wyoming's hurting. Wyoming's hurting right now as we started the week with a whole bunch of little girls that lost their lives because of just an accident, or not an accident, but an action that did not need to happen. And God, we hurt because of that. God, we hurt as we see a little boy that didn't do well, God, that was in this accident. We hurt because of that. God, we hurt as we see loved ones lost and friends lost, God, and now as we hear about this accident, God, we don't really fully know what is going on, but God, we do know this. We hurt because of this. God, this is a close-knit family, this state is, and when things like this happen, we hurt. God, we do lift up to you the first responders, the EMTs, our firefighters, our highway patrolmen, God, tow truck drivers, anyone involved in this accident in this tunnel, God, on I-80. We know that there's no making sense of this right now, and with the loss of life and with everything that this means, God, this has far-reaching ramifications. God, I pray that you would bring peace in a situation where peace is so hard to find. God, we just pray right now for further protection. God, I pray that you would supernaturally shore up the tunnels. God, I pray that we would not see any of our first responders injured in this. God, I pray that you would put out any fires that could possibly be burning. You would be helping them clear debris, finding people if they need to find people. God, you know exactly what's going on, and I pray that you would just that you give supernatural wisdom as they walk this process out. God, I pray that as we, the legislature, are here making decisions, God, let us always make wise decisions for the safety of our state. Let us make wise decisions for the policies that will protect the people of this state. And God, as we administer justice and walk that out and work on infrastructure, God, let us be wise as we do that. God, we speak into every one of these situations, and God, as this state is hurting this week, God, I just pray that your hand would be upon it. Be upon the people, the loved ones of those that have lost life. And God, I pray that we would rally as a state around a lot of hurting people. We pray these things in Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, Representative Harrelson. Appreciate that. Representative Wiley for making us aware of that. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a few bills left on second reading to go through here, so next bill for our consideration, Senate File 42.
Senate File 42, sponsored by Senator Guru. Resort hotel liquor licenses and act relating to alcoholic beverages.
Senate File 42 having been read two separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, is so ordered. Next bill for consideration, Senate File 48.
Senate File 48, sponsored by Revenue. Business property exemption and act relating to taxation and revenue.
Senate File 48 having been read two separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Next file for our consideration, Senate File 49.
Senate File 49, sponsored by Revenue. Tangible personal property index and depreciation and act relating to ad valorem taxation.
Senate File 49 having been read two separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Next bill for our consideration, Senate File 81.
Senate File 81, sponsored by Agriculture. Tax exemption, property owned by the state, and act relating to taxation and revenue.
We have an amendment. Representative Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to move House Amendment number 1 to
Second reading amendment number 1.
House standing, that one too, to Senate File number 81.
There you go.
Thank you.
What you said. Yeah, what you said. There you go. All right.
Good call, Mr. Okay, in this, what we're doing here is just, there was a lot of conversation yesterday about why, when, and what. So we went back through and we've kind of isolated the ag property out with this amendment, but we've also included the rest of the state properties in there for this discussion that we've got to have and give them a little bit of time to figure this out. So I think this is a good amendment to the bill, and I would hope for an aye and answer any questions.
Any members for their first time? Representative Harrelson for his first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just a clarification, as I'm looking at, I'm sorry, I'm trying to read this into the bill real quick. I just asked the question, is this, as I look at this, it seems like it's in a lot of ways, this is already covered in the bill. Could you, I mean, are we for sure getting into a new territory? It feels like this has already been somewhat covered in the bill. I kind of wanted just to maybe have a little bit more conversation of exactly what this amendment does. Sorry, we've got a lot going on right now, and I'm just trying to make sure I understand it as we read this in. So I see other people going to mic, so thank you. Sorry for the slow uptake on this. I'm just wanting to make sure I understood this as we brought it in.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Eklund for your first time.
Mr. Speaker, so in committee, we talked a bit about this, and I think there have been people trying to work on this very thing to try to get a broad base of purposes on the state lands. And I think most of them came to the conclusion that we'd probably just end up with grazing leases this year for a couple of years. And then this one extends it out 2 years. I'm in favor of the bill. I don't know if I am on the amendment, but if there are some people down the hall that have worked on this and gave up, have suggested it might be an interim topic, and that's what this amendment would do. It'd push it to 2027. But I'm guessing if there are people that don't like it, we have to go to a conference committee. It could be stripped out or changed to the suiting of everybody involved. For the bill, not sure about the amendment.
Thank you, Representative. Any other representatives for their first time? First time? Representative Larson, Lloyd, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So as I read the bill and it talks about the property that would be exempt is that's used for agricultural purposes. And then as I look at your amendment, we say that it's those lands that have a governmental purpose, and you're saying that ag lands are for a governmental purpose. And I'm just trying to, if you could walk me through what the difference your amendment has to what's in the bill. And then if you could correct, because the good former chairman of ag said this is on grazing leases, but it encompasses all ag lands if I see it accurately. So if you could just confirm that, make sure. And then my final one on that good man from land where the dam is savory is why just ag? Maybe that's what the second portion of your amendment does, is include everything. Thank you.
Any other members? Representative Lean, for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I read the amendment, I'm cautious to adopt it. Defining governmental purpose may be a bigger topic than what's on the amendment. And I just urge caution, vote what you need to vote on it, but I just urge caution in defining governmental purpose on the ag land bill.
Any other members? First time. Representative Locke, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And just reinforcing the last speaker, I think that this is, we're just trying to understand the breadth of this amendment and what we're really trying to do here. But that, again, throwing caution into defining governmental purpose and trying to make this too broad, I think that would be a mistake to make it too broad. Thank you.
Any other members? First time. Representative Harshman, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think, members, if you look at that second paragraph, which is really the new language, and really the issue is a couple leases around the state, particularly the one involving the Supreme Court decision. And, you know, if I would point to the body that this expires in 2 years. So it gives a committee, whoever's assigned this, to study it and work it out. But what it prevents is, for the next couple of years, right pocket, left pocket. I mean, that's all it's going to happen. We're probably talking about $3 or $4 million that the state then will have to appropriate to pay a property tax to a local government at a right pocket, left pocket. So I think the body down the hall got into a pretty good discussion about this. That's why that other bill failed. But Mr. Speaker and members, I think it'd be worth our while to have that discussion again, particularly if they want a conference committee on it again and talk about, again, if the amendment fails, I don't have a problem with us if we want to appropriate another $3 million to right pocket, left pocket ourselves. But I don't think we need to, and it's got as I said, an expiration date on it in 2 years. So I think it's good policy moving forward to pass this and give those leaseholders out there some certainty as well. What if their lease comes up in 6 months? And now we got to renegotiate. The lease isn't going to go down now that we have to pay property tax. It's going to change that whole dynamic. And so I think this gives those leaseholders a little certainty and a chance to come back and work with us as we define governmental use. So on and for. Thank you.
Any other member? Representative Alamand? Nope. Any other members for your first time? First time? Second time? Representative Lean, second time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just have a question. So say we adopt this amendment and in the 2-year time period, we don't redefine what governmental purpose is, then what happens? And do we have the opportunity to carry this forward? Or because it's in the green books, we're now stuck with it? That's my question. Thank you.
Any other member for their second time? Representative Haraldson, second time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I can answer that. This is in essence a sunset date. So this will strip off and we'll go back to how we were before any of this, which then we have that. I mean, this is it. There's an incentive here to figure this out, you guys, because we've got a court case that's putting us into a place where we have to make a decision as a body and move forward. So this entire concept is, and I don't loosely use the word a Band-Aid, but it is a form of a Band-Aid to fix it for now until we can have a very robust conversation on it. And I am understanding more as I'm looking at this, and it's my fault I didn't read through this and read it in like I should have earlier. But I believe that if we look at this, obviously the wording that we currently have in the bill has that sunset date of December 31st, 2026. This just goes to January 1st, 2027. So obviously ours is better because it has one more day. That was a joke. We're trying to make some people laugh. But I do believe this also, in essence, cleans up the conversation of having to do that transfer, state to state transfer. So the more I look at it, I do believe this is probably a good move if we want to clean up that pocket to pocket transfer of the state paying the state. This eliminates that. Now, is that a horrible thing? Maybe not. But I think it's a redundancy we don't need. This does address the agricultural lands. The only place that I had really any questions was on your amendment, line 18. It says lands owned by the state of Wyoming are exempt from property taxation regardless of the use of the lands. And that regardless of the use of the lands language is what I was kind of confused with, that state lease for agriculture. I didn't want to contradict itself, but it's outside of that because it's state owned. And so I believe that we're good. So thank you guys for the conversation. I didn't want to just go to a vote and not have a good idea of what we were voting on. And so I think that this would, really all this does is eliminate that the state paying the state itself conversation. And so there's just, from what I've gathered, listening and seeing, but either way, this will sunset and we will have to address this before beginning of 2027.
Any other members for their second time? Second time? None? To the bringer. Representative Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The good representative from where the wheat is in the land did clear up a lot of the questions here, but specifically we from the original bill on page 2, we remove 1 through 3, give a better definition, assign it one little governmental purpose. So we assign it what we deem right now as a governmental purpose. And then the other half of the bill opens it up and forces this conversation over the rest of the state land. So I think this is a very good move for us. And like he said, one day, either way, I think we're in pretty good shape here. So I'd appreciate an aye vote on this. And call for the question.
Question being called for. Body, you're being asked to decide on second reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 81. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed, no. The amendment has been adopted. Senate File 81 having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Next bill for our consideration, Senate File 149.
Senate File 149, sponsored by Senator Pappas. Wildlife Conservation License Plates Amendments, an act relating to motor vehicles.
Senate File 149 having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, so ordered. Next Senate file for our consideration is Senate Joint Resolution number 3.
Senate Joint Resolution 3, sponsored by Senator Nethercott, commemorating Nellie Taylor Ross, a joint resolution commemorating the 100th anniversary of Nellie Taylor Ross becoming the first woman to hold the office of governor in the United States.
Senate Joint Resolution number 3 having been read through 2 separate times, the question is, shall the resolution be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. I move that the House
Resolve.
resolve itself, that's what I wanted to say right there. I move that the House resolve itself into committee of the whole.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed, no? Well, 1 hour? Okay. The motion has been adopted. Representative Chestick.
Committee of the Whole, please come to order.
Privilege of the floor.
Yes, Chairman Brown,
Privilege of the floor, Mr. Chairman.
please.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a very special guest in our South Gallery. We have former Representative Alan Slagle up there. If we can just welcome him back to the House. Good to see you, sir.
The first, let me get my list up here. Hang on a second.
First bill for your consideration.
Yes, I'm looking for my.
is Senate Bill 62. The reading clerk will read the bill.
Okay. Thank you. The first bill for our consideration is House Bill 62. The reading clerk will please read the bill. Senate File 62. Please, the reading clerk will please read the bill.
Mic on. Senate File 62, sponsored by Senator Larson. Restrooms in publicly funded schools 2, an act relating to school districts. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 10, Labor, Health, and Social Services, to whom is referred Senate File 62 engrossed. Restrooms in publicly funded schools 2, respect the report, same back to the House with the recommendation do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Clouston, Guggenmoss, Heft, McCann, Ottman, Rodriguez-Williams. Noes, Representative Yin. Excused, Representative Stivar and Wasserberger. Representative Rodriguez-Williams, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Rodriguez-Williams?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it does so with the recommendation that the Senate File 62 do pass, and I further move adoption of the Standing Committee amendment. And if I can, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to introduce the Standing Committee amendment and then turn the explanation of the bill over to the representative.
Please proceed.
Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, the Standing Committee Amendment number 1 is pretty simple. On page 4, line 12, we simply remove the word may and replace it with shall. And then on page 5, we remove the word, no wait, after the word clothed, we delete the word if, and then on line 11, delete the word available. So the sentence begins, the coach shall be accompanied by not less than one additional adult at all times.
Is there discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, question having been called, all those in favor of Standing Committee Amendment number 1 to Senate File 62, please say aye. Those opposed say no.
No.
A little enthusiasm, people. I'm going to say that the amendment has passed. Okay, hearing no call for division. Standing Committee Amendment number 1 to Senate File 62 has passed. Is there further discussion on the bill?
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
I would turn the explanation over of the bill to the good sharpshooter from the mountain named after the heart.
Representative Heft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This Senate file came about by a request by a school superintendent in a school board resolution from the land of the polecat and the panthers. This act relates to school districts requiring public school children to use restrooms that align with their sex at birth, requiring reasonable accommodations, providing exceptions, providing penalties, providing definitions, and providing for an effective date. Walking through the bill, the end of page 1, restrooms in public schools requirements, definitions, and rulemaking. Gives definitions that are outlined later in the bill. Going to page 3, to ensure privacy and safety. For restrooms for the exclusive use of the male sex and the exclusive use of the female sex. Public school districts shall provide a reasonable accommodation to any person who does not wish to use a multiple occupancy restroom or changing room in accordance with the designation required under subsection B of this section. For purposes of this subsection, a reasonable accommodation shall include a single occupancy restroom or changing room. This came about by a student that was uncomfortable with using the restroom with his designated sex, and the school did make a provision for them. And it created a little bit of angst in the school district. And there was a large public outcry because of this, and they wanted it codified into a file. And so that's why we're here today. So what happened, the school district, being hesitant to do anything on their own, asked for this bit of legislation to be put in order. This, when we get down to the end of page 3, it says this section shall not apply to persons entering a multiple occupancy restroom or changing room designated for the use of the opposite sex when entering for at least one of the following reasons. And those reasons are listed for custodial purposes, to render medical assistance, and if and it also, under number 3, Roman note 3, if a suitable meeting room or area is not available, a coach may enter a locker room before, during, or after a school-sponsored athletic activity, provided all students present are fully clothed. We already passed the amendment that the coach shall be accompanied by not less than one additional adult at all times. And if the coach is the opposite sex of the student present, the coach shall be accompanied by at least one adult of the same sex as the students present, and the adults present shall not be current high school students. We get to 4, for an adult, on the top of page 5, for an adult to render assistance to any student or person requiring assistance because of disability or age. And also, and then 5, if that suitable meeting room or area is not available and the coach is the coach of a school-sponsored athletic activity with members of both male and female sexes on the team or in the activity, the coach may enter a locker room before, during, or after the school-sponsored athletic activity if all the students are fully clothed. We removed "if available" in the amendment. The coach shall not be accompanied by not less than one additional adult at all times, but an additional adult shall not be required if members of the activity of both sexes are present in the locker room, and the adult present shall not be current high school student. So this also allows, towards the bottom of page 5, the school board to adopt its own policies. And we felt that that was appropriate. It could be school district by school district could do that and choose their own disciplinary actions. No school district board or trustee shall adopt a policy contrary to the provisions of this section. Going on to page 6, a parent or legal guardian of a student enrolled in a physically attending a public school district shall have a cause or action against the public school for noncompliance with the provision of sub 6 of B, C, or D of this section. So the school board, we get down duties of the boards and trustees. The school board will ensure that each school district in the state requires every multiple occupancy restroom or changing room be designed for the exclusive use of the male sex or the exclusive use of the female sex. And it to become effective immediately upon passage of this bill. To quote a very dear friend of mine, and because I also walk in the cowboy way, keep things simple, it's always been a good advice that cowboys don't use the cowgirl's outhouse. And I will stand for any questions. Thank you.
I do see there is a committee of the whole amendment. Is we going to be hearing that, or is that going to be moved? Representative Provenza.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the interest of time and everybody's well-being today, I'm going to withdraw Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1.
Thank you. Is there further discussion on the bill? Representative Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a question for the bringer. My only concern, hesitation is for some of our smaller schools. I've actually been in some of our older, larger schools too, that may not have the facilities may not have single occupancy facilities. All of theirs may be the multi-occupancy. So there may be some construction that needs to happen, and additions to adding some of those single occupancy rooms. So where our school districts might go to receive help and funding just to be in compliance.
Further discussion, Representative Jarvis.
Thank you, Chairman. Just some of the same concerns that are very similar to the previous bill that was much like this. On page 3, and it kind of builds on what the representative was talking about, it says any person basically can be able to use a single occupancy if they so choose. When I look at these bills and I look at the practicality and the actual application of them, here's some of the thoughts that I have. How this is going to require that, because there's no times on when this has to happen for school buildings on and off. This is a school building bill. So in the off hours, this is going to require the opening up of the single pretty much every school district has a single occupancy, except for a lot of the times they're tucked back behind the administrators or in the administrative staff area. So this would require those areas to be opened up and unlocked to the public, which would involve additional personnel to be able to manage those areas. The other question on page 3, this bill doesn't actually take into account like the other bill did for opposing teams. This would actually require any team coming in to play against another team to probably be fully dressed when they come and fully dressed when they leave, because an opposing team would not be able to use the opposite sex locker rooms, according to this bill. So I don't see that working out for practicality pieces really well, because there's no amendments for an alternative. It's just a hard, boys will use boys' bathrooms and girls will use girls' bathrooms in all facilities involved. The page 4, my concern there is the locker rooms have PE teachers that their offices are in there. Is this going to now require PE teachers to have multiple PE teachers in there? Because during those periods, those staff, although they cannot see, it is in the locker room and it is part of the locker room. So they're in there as part of the supervision piece. That is going to be an interesting endeavor for schools. On page 5, the way that it's worded right there on lines 1 through lines 3, for adults who render assistance to any student or person requiring assistance because of disability or age, this means that if you are a parent of a small child, you will be headed into the opposite sex bathroom to be able to help your child out with that sex. So if your child is the opposite sex, with the way that this is worded, as is. So lines 5 through lines 15, it really is the same kind of concept. I guess my question there is when it talks about when there's members of both male and female sexes, this isn't addressed anywhere else in the bill. And all of a sudden now it's okay for opposite sex, both boys and girls, to go into the locker room. And so that's an interesting way that they chose to word it on that one. And then finally, on the last page, page 6, the lines 1 through lines 5, where parents and legal guardians have the ability to follow suit, teachers and school officials are totally left out here. And not protected is also having that same right. And then finally, at the very bottom, it just goes back to that lines 15 through 18 doesn't take an account for any traveling teams coming in. Thank you.
Is there further discussion on the bill? Minority Leader Yen.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Members, we made a lot of changes to that big, broader bill that we had from the good representative where the bighorns are. And so I think we're going to need a lot of conforming amendments for this bill just so it matches the same fixes that we brought for that bill as well. So hopefully we can have members work on that over the weekend. But I think generally we need to have a decision because both bills, it doesn't make sense for us to pass through both chambers, both bills, because they overlap so much. So we need to pick one or the other. This one's tighter, that one's broader. But I think either us as a body or leadership needs to make a choice on how we slim that down.
Representative Heft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I go back to keeping it simple. This particular file was spent, a lot of time was spent with the school district in question, and they were more than willing. They thought that this was the simplest way to solve the problem at hand, and I will just stand with the bill the way it's written.
Is there any further discussion on the bill? Are we ready for the question? Question being called, all those in favor of Chairman Rodriguez-Williams' motion that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it does so with the recommendation that Senate File 62 do pass. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Senate File 62 has passed Committee of the Whole. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 73.
Senate File 73, sponsored by Senator Brennan. Charter school funding amendments, an act relating to charter schools. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 4, Education, to whom is referred Senate File 73, charter school funding amendments, respectfully report, same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Andrew, Bratton, Erickson, Guggenmoss, Kelly, Lawley, Singh, Strzok, Williams. Representative Andrew, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. Chairman Andrew, what is your pleasure?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it do so with the recommendation that Senate File 73 do pass. Mr. Chairman, public charter schools are a part of the district they are located in. Their student population is counted in the district's configuration and generates ADM funding in the school foundation model and the district's block grant. The school foundation model is broken into different components. This bill specifically addresses the component of central staff, both personnel and non-personnel funding. Personnel includes office managers, principals, curriculum directors, and non-personnel funding includes items like toilet paper or cleaning supplies and other operational costs. Currently, the statute does not flow central staff funds to the charter schools, so districts are retaining those funds whether they provide any of those services or not. This bill would flow those central office dollars using a proportional calculation that is generated by the public charter school to the school level. This is not new funding or additional funding. This does not change the current contracts or the ability for district authorized charter schools to contract with the local district for some or all of these services as appropriate for their school. This takes the existing funding being generated in the school foundation model and distributes it to the school level that is to the school that is realizing the financial impact providing these services. To be clear, no hardship is created for the local district because they are providing services. They are not providing services for students who are not subject to this bill. Flowing the funding to the school, providing the service is common sense approach to ensuring our students are all getting the state foundation dollars as intended. Charters run on shoestring budgets, and this makes certain that every dollar is going to support the student in the school they attend. And Mr. Chairman, I would like to move at this time the Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1. And this amendment is from our staff. There was a wrong section in the law was referenced and somehow made it all the way to the House where we need to fix this. Otherwise, we don't know what this bill does. It might be fun to find out. We could try. But I would recommend an aye vote and call for the question on the Committee of the Whole amendment.
Is there discussion on the Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1? Seeing none, question having been called. All those in favor of standing of Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. No? No. The Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1 has been adopted. We are back on the bill. Is there further discussion of the bill? Seeing none, question having been called. All those in favor of Chairman Andrews' motion that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it does so with the recommendation that Senate File 73 do pass. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, please say no. No. Senate File 73 has passed the Committee of the Whole. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 80. The reading clerk will please read the bill.
Senate File 80, sponsored by Water. Abandonment of water rights, limitations, an act relating to water. Mr. Speaker, your Committee number 5, Agriculture, State and Public Lands and Water Resources, to whom is referred Senate File 80 engrossed. Abandonment of water rights, limitations. Respectfully report, same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Banks, Davis, Eklund, Johnson, Ottman, Provenza, Schmid, Strzok, Winter. Representative Winter, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Winter?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it do so with the recommendation that Bill number Senate File 80 do pass. And the representative from the center of the state will explain the bill.
Representative Strzok.
Thank you, Chairman. So what this is, it's abandonment of water rights limitations. So what is in our statutes, if you have not put a water on your land for 5 years, you actually end up losing those water rights. So what we've added to this, what has been added and has been through the Select Water Committee, was on page 2, right at 9, it says, what will happen is if you've got the owner of the lawful dam or diversion system, and it's defined in our Wyoming statute, and if it's unused due to necessary repairs or replacements. So what this will do is add another 5 years. And then if it continues and you've still got problems, you're not getting your replacements, and whichever, even in another county that they've got some problems with tunnels, what this will do is you can go and ask for more time, and that should hopefully be able to keep our water rights safe. So I'd appreciate an eye on this. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion on the bill? Seeing none, question having been called. All those in favor of Chairman Winter's motion that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it does so with the recommendation that Senate File 80 do pass. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, say no. Senate File 80 has passed the Committee of the Whole. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 77. The reading clerk will please read the bill.
Senate File 77, sponsored by Senator Hutchings. Compelled speech is not free speech. An act relating to the administration of government. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 1, Judiciary, to whom is referred Senate File 77 engrossed, compelled speech is not free speech, respectfully reports same back to the House with the recommendation that do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Brady, Bratton, Filer, Kelly, Lean, Singh, Washit, Webb. Noes, Representative Chestick. Representative Washit, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Washit?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, to do so with a recommendation that Senate File 77 do pass, and I further move the adoption of the Standing Committee amendment, and I turn over explanation of both the bill and the amendment to the good representative from Windy County Number 1.
Representative Lean.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And today, Senate File 77 is compelled speech. Compelled speech is an act that is prohibiting the state and its political subdivisions from requiring the use of preferred pronouns, authorizing a civil remedy, and providing for an effective date. What this is not is a bullying or harassment authorization. So we'll just knock that argument out of the park before it even happens. And this says that those individuals that have lost their jobs around our state for not referring to a student as a preferred pronoun do in fact have authorization to come back and remain employed for these cases going forward. And with that, I'll stand for any questions. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, the amendment. The amendment was reinstating what is the original copy
Could you please move, has the amendment been moved? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. The amendment is to re-put in section 2, which is granting immunity from tort liability and liability on contracts.
You've heard the motion on the Standing Committee amendment. Is there discussion on the amendment Standing Committee Amendment Number 1? Seeing no further discussion, question having been called. All those in favor of Standing Committee Number 1 to Senate File 77, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. The Standing Committee Number 1 has been adopted. We are back on the bill. Representative Filer.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I would respectfully withdraw committee of the whole amendment number 1.
Standing Committee Amendment number 1 having been withdrawn, is there further discussion on the bill? Seeing none, a question having been called, all those in favor of Chairman Washtett's motion that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it does so with the recommendation that Senate File 77 do pass. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Senate File 77 has passed the Committee of the Whole. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 131. The reading clerk will please read the bill.
Senate File 131, sponsored by Senator Driscoll, Charter School Leasing, an act relating to K-12 school facilities. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 4 Education, to whom is referred Senate File 131 engrossed, Charter School Leasing, respectfully reports same back to the House with the recommendation that do pass. Ayes, Representatives Andrew, Bratton, Erickson, Guggenmoss, Kelly, Lawley, Singh, Strzok, Williams. Representative Andrew, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Andrew?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report it, do so with the recommendation that Senate File 131 do pass. Mr. Chairman, Senate File 131 addresses a serious issue in how we support charter schools with facility leases. Right now, if a charter school does not have access to a district-owned facility, the state provides lease payments so that they can secure their own building. However, before those payments are approved, the department that deals with construction must determine whether space is available in the district. If they decide a building is both available and adequate, the charter school is no longer eligible for lease assistance, even if the district is unwilling to offer that space to them. This creates instability for charter schools. Many start in independent facilities because no district space was available at the time. But under the current law, if a district building later becomes available, the charter could be forced to move into it or lose lease support, even if they've already signed a long-term lease or invested in another location. This puts schools in an impossible position, forced to relocate, disrupt operations, and uproot students simply because district space suddenly became an option. Senate File 131 eliminates this bureaucratic hurdle and allows charter schools to make long-term stable decisions for their students. It removes the requirement that lease payments depend on a determination from the department and instead lets charter schools and districts work out facility agreements directly. This issue is urgent. We know that some charter schools could face this problem as early as next year. Without this change, we are putting schools at risk of forced relocations, financial instability, and unnecessary disruptions to families. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Is there any further discussion on the bill? Question having been called, all those in favor of Chairman Andrews' motion that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report that Senate File 131 do pass, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. Senate File 131 has passed Committee of the Whole. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 78. The reading clerk will please read the bill.
Senate File 78, sponsored by Senator Hutchings, distribution of unsolicited absentee ballot request forms, an act relating to election. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 7, Corporations, Elections, and Political Subdivisions, to whom is referred Senate File 78 engrossed. Distribution of unsolicited absentee ballot request forms. Respectfully report, same back to the House with the recommendation of do pass. Ayes, Representatives Brown, Heft, Johnson, Knapp, Locke, Lucas, Webb, Weber. Noes, Representative Yin. Representative Knapp, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Knapp?
Mr. Chairman, I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report it, do so with the recommendation that Bill numbers SF 78 do pass, and with the explanation, I will pass it over and we'll see whether he sings this or not.
Representative Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, only upon request. So, folks, this is Senate File 78. This is about unsolicited ballot or unsolicited absentee ballot applications. And so all this does is it makes it in order to send out what is an official government document. In order to get this sent to your house, it has to be requested by the person in question, that it would be the voter. Instead of it being sent out, for example, in some sort of mass mailer format where information that is sensitive information could be then manipulated in a way to get sent to a centralized location where people wouldn't really necessarily know what's going on with that information. This just keeps things simple and mandates that there is a request made specifically to the clerk, the county clerk, or the Secretary of State. And with that, I stand for any questions.
Is there discussion on the amendment? Representative Connolly.
That's cannoli. Thank you. I just have just a question. So when it says no person except a county clerk, can the county clerk designate like their deputy or somebody like that, or does it have to specifically be the county clerk?
Representative Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this would be anyone under the authority of the county clerk, and so they would be able to distribute that on their behalf.
Is there any further discussion on the bill? Are you ready for the question? Question having been called, all those in favor of Chairman Knapp's motion that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it does so with a recommendation that Senate File 78 do pass. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Senate File 78 has passed the Committee of the Whole. The next bill for consideration is Senate File 96. The reading clerk, please read the bill.
Senate File 96, sponsored by Senator Ide, Wyoming Gold Act. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 2 Appropriations, to whom is referred Senate File 96 engrossed, Wyoming Gold Act, respect the report, same back to the House with the recommendation that do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Alaman, Angelos, Bear, Haroldson, Pendergraft. Noes, Representative Sherwood. Excused, Representative Smith. Representative Bear, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Bear?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it do so with the recommendation that Senate File 96 do pass, and I further move the adoption of the Standing Committee Amendment. I'll give it a description of that Standing Committee Amendment, and then I'll turn over the description of the bill to the good representative from the eastern side of the state. Ladies and gentlemen, this amendment simply switches the department that's going to deal with this issue. We heard testimony during the presentation of the bill in our committee that the accepting of revenue really belongs in that department which deals with revenue rather than that one that takes our money and tries to make it more profitable and then sends it out. So the issue that this bill is dealing with is receiving funds with precious metals. So we want to have that agency that does that take care of that. So I would ask for your favorable aye vote on it, and I'll stand for questions if there are any.
Is there further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, are you ready for the question? Question having been called, all those in favor of Standing Committee Number 1, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. Standing Committee Amendment Number 1 has been adopted. We are back on the bill. Representative Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You may have just received a couple handouts. And they basically talk about gold price versus US debt and visualizing US debt in $1 bills. So that is a helpful visualization on what the dollar has done and what fiat currency is. But the main point of Senate File 96 is to require the state of Wyoming to acquire and hold $10 million of physical gold or silver and to prompt the state to get up to speed with how to deal with constitutional money. Holding gold as a strategic asset helps the state hedge against its high exposure to Federal Reserve notes or dollars, and those values have been plummeting. We've all been experiencing that greatly. The state has a large amount of unhedged exposure to the dollar, and there was legislation proposed in 2019 to encourage the state of Wyoming to hold gold, and the gold price in dollars has risen more than 61% since that time. So we had an opportunity in 2019, and even since I've been in office, 2023, the price of gold was about $1,800 per ounce, and today it sits over $2,900 per ounce. So that's an $1,100 per ounce increase, which is 61%. And if we had only invested that $10 million in gold in just 2023, just 2 short years ago, that would now be about $16.1 million in value. Currently, central banks across the state are acquiring more gold than they ever have of any in the last 50 years, and holding some gold would help the state of Wyoming hedge against its high exposure to Federal Reserve notes, also known as dollars, and those values have recently been plummeting faster than it ever has since the 70s. Right now, the state has a lot of opportunity ahead of itself. The state treasurer's office can work with outside experts such as precious metal depositories. And the cool thing is, currently there are at least 3 qualified depositories in the state of Wyoming, and they would offer the state different services such as receiving, authenticating, exchanging, and storing the state's gold and silver. And additionally, this bill, Senate File 96, additionally requires that the state treasurer shall conduct a study that reviews methods for the state to renew department, for the revenue department to begin accepting gold and silver as payment as a medium. So gold and silver are the only money mentioned in our U.S. Constitution, Article 1, Section 10. It is our duty to take some initial steps in this direction to not only abide by our Constitution, but to make sure that the resources of our state are protected against further dollar devaluation. Thank you.
Representative Allemond.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. These figures were as of yesterday. I did not redo them. Yesterday, silver was at $32.30. Today, it's over 33. In 2/13 of last year, 24, silver was 22.08, which is a difference of $9.22 per ounce. And if we would have bought $10,000 worth of silver last year, that would have been 452,899 ounces. And if we would sell that silver today, we would have made $4,175,724 in 1 year off of $10,000 or $10 million worth of silver. Yesterday, gold was at $2,932.29. A year ago, it was $1,991.45. If we, a year ago, would have bought $10 million in gold, we would have received 5,022 ounces. And if we would sell that gold, if we would have sold that gold yesterday, 1 year, $10,000 or $10 million would have made us $4,724 in just 1 year. Now let's look at what the dollar's done to us. Inflation is 4.3% over 1 year. So what we lost in dollars was $430,000 is what we lost. Looks to me like it's a whole lot better to put a little gold and silver, not all, not even half, not even a quarter, but let's put some money in gold and silver because it looks like a pretty good hedge for us. Thank you.
Chairman Washit.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I caught part of the testimony in committee, and it sounded like to me that the elected official who does our investments gave a fairly lengthy explanation as to why the state doesn't invest in this gold today. They can. There's no prohibition against it, but they don't because it's not seen as a good investment, because you only get a return when you sell it. Okay? And so all the people who want us to hold gold as a hedge against inflation or further problems with the dollar, of course, when do they think we should sell it? Never, right? So that $10 million that's put into gold may at some point in the future, when a body agrees that it's okay to sell it, reap returns, and it will get returns in dollars. And so all the time that this $10 million is locked up in gold, it's not getting any dividends or interest until the day you sell it. And so there's lost opportunity that had we put that $10 million into some other type of investment that was providing dividends and interest, we would be gaining revenue that we can use in our budget. But if we buy gold, we don't have any of that gain until the day we sell it for dollars.
Representative Nicholas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, ladies and gentlemen, this amendment has come up repeatedly over the last, literally, 14 years since I've been here. But who's driving this amendment? It's the folks around here who want to make money off of selling us gold. Literally. That's who's driving this amendment. And so what's the rationale? Because the only way you make money on gold is to buy and sell on the short term. You don't make money off of gold on the long term. You just don't. So let's just walk through. Right now, the folks that invest our money have the ability to buy and sell gold on the open market. But they don't do it. Why? Because it's so volatile. It's 3 times more volatile than any other stock you can actually perform in. And we are not, the whole reason that we have created this investment portfolio in the long term is because we increase our returns over the long term. Gold does not do that. It's pretty simple. Equities have outperformed gold in 1 year, 5 years, 20 years, and 30 years. You name it. Other than the short term, equities outperform it. But more importantly, we have experts who determine whether or not gold is a good idea and how to invest it and when. Now, our folks at retirement, which used to be the liaison to and was involved in that investment portfolio, they do short-term investment on gold. But that's all it is, short-term, because they know it's so volatile that they will lose money unless they buy it low, sell it high, but that doesn't always work. So in the last 30 years, the S&P has outperformed gold by 1,534%. Just the S&P, 1,534%. So why would we invest in something that's going to lose us 1,530%? Gold is volatile. It fluctuates day to day because of bills like this, that all of a sudden people want to buy gold. I tuned in on the conference committee or when this was being supported, and every one of them were all putting money in their pockets and taking the money out of our pockets, literally. Why the heck would we do that? There's no dividends with gold. It sits on it, and it just grows over time, value. But everything else feeds us money while it's sitting there. That's why we go to other portfolios and not gold. Everything we do makes more money than this. But ultimately, we put the investment thought process into the experts. We don't tell them how to invest. When we start playing that game, we lose, right? On and against.
Chairman Bear.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to start by addressing a comment from the good chairman of committee number 1. He said that he heard that it was a bad investment. I think we need to correct that. What was stated in the committee was that this investment is not good for creating cash flow. And we task our good executive number 3 with creating cash flow so that we can spend it. Right now, about 30% of our state's revenues come from that good executive's investments. And that's important, especially if we see other revenue streams slowing down. Therefore, this is a decision of the body to create a different policy. This one is, as the previous speaker said, it's not really about making money. It is a hedge against inflation. And if you look at the handouts that came along, you can see that over a long period of time, this product, these precious metals, increase pretty much along the same lines as this inflation. It was said that it doesn't do well compared to S&P. I think that's true, but why is the S&P doing better over the near term? Because of quantitative easing, which is creating inflation. So there's a lot of cause and effect here that we need to take into account. And that's why I want to propose to this body that I'm on and for the bill, because I think it's important that this body go ahead and go down this path and put some of these precious metals into our possession. We figure out what is the cost really going to be. And this is a pretty small investment. And I think going forward, we need to think about it this way. And I think that just about every family that has decided to make these kind of investments does it the same way. In fact, what we did hear in testimony was the chief investor for the state holds some of these personally, because his personal philosophy is that he should have some to hedge against some disasters or some inflation, as does that good executive for number 3. What does a family do? They don't go to their 401k and say, okay, I want this much of it in gold. Some people do, but most people just say, hey, I've got some extra disposable income. I want to put some away in this particular investment, in addition to what I have in that fundraising apparatus called a 401k. And I think that's really the way we should be thinking about this. In other words, what I'm saying is this, in the future, should probably look something like a spending policy, where a committee looks at it on an annual basis and says, do we want to purchase more or not? And they bring it to the body in a bill, and we make that decision. But in the meantime, we have this bill, this mechanism to get started to see, can we do it and can we do it well? So on and for the bill.
Representative Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman there. Hey, I kind of got a different little slant at this. You know, my dad always said, never buy high and sell low. But looking at this, I think we would be better to invest $10 million in cattle and get a return on the calves. But this is ludicrous. $10 million in gold? What do we do with it? It just sits there. It does not earn us anything. You know, and if we're going to try and hedge on inflation, we have a tool in our toolbox called taxation. That's our hedge on inflation. I mean, to have gold sitting there is, well, it is. That's how we got where we got to the $10 million. But I'm looking at the farm economics of this. You don't buy high. You know, I could take my crystal ball out, and when cows were at $1,200, I should have bought a lot of them, seeing that they're at $3,000 now. But my crystal ball, as pointed out by the earlier presenter, said that if we'd have bought then, we'd have had this now. So I'm not on and for having solid gold in my hand. It's just something. That's it. I don't see the value of it. Generates us nothing. On and against the bill.
Representative Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Okay, just some minor basics on investing. First of all, we realize here that one of the worst investments out there is a Federal Reserve note. You don't get wealthy by collecting dollars because every day they're worth a little bit less than the day before. And precious metals are seen as a way to guard against that because as the value of the dollar falls, the value of the precious metal tends to go up. That being said, we're not necessarily talking here about the mainstay of our investment. We're talking about a sovereign wealth fund. We're talking about a very, very small percentage of it as a protection. No doubt, equities are far superior. They pay dividends. They are also guarded against inflation because their value goes up. You look at the stock market's at 45,000 now. So that goes up with an inflation too. So you don't lose your investments in equities. Stock market's never gone to zero. And if that ever happened, the precious metals you'd have to buy would be lead and brass, not gold and silver anyway. So that's not necessarily a concern. I'm neither for nor against this, but let's not look at this as whether or not this is a good investment. By and large, the representative whose name shares a synonym with currency is correct that this is not a good investment strategy. The good gentleman over here is correct that the worst time to buy gold is now because it's like the highest it's ever been. But we're talking about a very, very small percentage just as a safety measure. We'd be purchasing some securities, all that is. It's not a long-term investment by any means.
Representative Lane.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I echo the good representative that just spoke sentiments. And I also say that gold is traded worldwide. And so it has been through the centuries that it has been one of the most sought after precious metals. I ask, why is the state invested in land? It could be said that that is also not generating a great deal of revenue. So here we are, we invest in land, stable token. We heard a bill on Bitcoin. Why not diversify our funding to gold? This will hedge against inflation for the long term. It is therefore imperative that our state protect its people and wealth of Wyoming through acquiring physical gold and silver. On and for this bill.
Representative Locke.
Thank you, and I'll try to be quick because it's already been said, but you know, here in Wyoming, we've actually passed some great sound money laws and given ourselves a really good basis and started down this path. That being said, again, it isn't about how much money we're going to turn on this thing. This is a diversification of our investment is all this really is. It's a small portion of that. If you stop and look at what's happening out there, there's companies putting precious metals on their books. There's banks putting precious metal on their books. Why are they doing that? They're doing it for the exact reasons that have been discussed many times. It's because look at the national debt. Look at what happens to a lot of people like to think of that piece of paper in your pocket as money. It's really not money. It's a debt note. That's what it is. So as that net debt note continues to lose money sitting in your pocket every day, as we continue to quantitative ease and print more money, this does nothing but hedges us against those types of things that are happening out there. So I'm on and for this bill. I think we need to do it. I think we need to start understanding the process, get a little bit, and start down this path. Again, on and for the bill. Thank you.
Representative Larson Lloyd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just like to pose a couple of thoughts for the body to consider. I mean, I like gold. They're fun to hold in your hand. My wife likes giving them to her kids for Christmas, and you know, it's wonderful. I think it certainly has value, always has had value, will have value. But please consider for a moment the structure of our state government and how we invest and what we invest in. And that is left up to that agency who has an investment committee. And I'm sure they appreciate this advice, but I would I may be wrong, but I'm going to guess that maybe they've been doing this longer and perhaps have a little more understanding of good investments and long-term investments, including gold, because they can invest in it now. And here we are now passing legislation telling these folks, imposing our will upon them, even if it goes against the investment strategy, which I would submit to you has been very, very successful. We've heard as over the last 10 years, as we've tried to really increase the return on investments, to the good point that the chairman of committee number 2 pointed out, that we're now generating 30% of our revenue on earnings from those investments. These guys know how to do that, and yet we want to do a study of our collective investment minds here in both sides of the house, and then come back and study it again and make further maybe even make a committee to make further recommendations to these folks on how we invest. That goes completely against the investment strategies of all sovereign wealth, where you try to keep the government, the political influence completely bifurcated from the investment side. Principal Santiago, it's where they had the meeting. I just, you know, I love gold. I think it's great, but these guys know how to invest. They know, I have great faith in them. And let's let them do their job and not kind of, this is exciting. I know, you know, it's fun to think about it, but I think let them do their job. And I'd encourage us to just put this aside and let them continue to do the wonderful job that they're doing.
Representative Harrelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So as we listen to this testimony in committee, one of the things that I did as I was sitting there, I just said, you know, I want to start digging deeper into, is this something that only Wyoming's talked about, or have other states talked about? And as I was researching, I found the state directly to the west of us that has the Salty Lake. They put $100 million into gold. And the state that has their own power grid down south, they actually have their own bullion reserve on a very high level. And so I think that, I think that probably both sides of this conversation are accurate. Let's face it, if we're looking at it, you're not going to have a good liquid asset if you pick up gold. There is a point where you have to understand there's a diversification of portfolio that we're talking about here. $30+ billion is what this state has invested off and on through their funds. and this is $10 million. So I think that we need to understand this is a drop in the bucket. It's not going to, I mean, if we're being 100% honest, this isn't going to save the state from inflation, but I do believe it is a conversation and a step in the right direction of saying, hey, we feel that there is a point for diversification. And I think we need to understand this is us not taking away the investment from the good number 3 executive. This is us saying, as the Wyoming legislature, we want to personally have an investment in gold in this state. And so I think that as we heard S&P, we've heard those numbers. That's all true, you guys. But I think there is a point where when we look at our own personal finances, why do we diversify our finances? Because there is intelligence and diversification of finances. And so I think that we need to understand as the state, there is still a place where there's intelligence and diversification of finances. And is this going to, in the long run, give us the greatest return of any investment? We don't know. It could. And it may not. But I will say this, as long as unless something drastically changes in the structure of the mining operations of this nation, gold and the world, gold will always be an asset. And if we go back into the foundation of this nation's fiscal policy, gold was the asset. And so I think that it's important to understand we're not disagreeing with the speakers that are getting up here saying, well, there's better return on investment on some other things. Sure, we won't disagree with that. But I believe this is an opportunity, if we as the body want to make a decision that a part of the diversification of our finances as the state of Wyoming is gold, if that's it, then I think this is a good place to vote. Me personally, I think that'd be a wise choice because it's an opportunity we have to make that choice. Should we put $30 billion into it? No, I think that would be foolish. But I do believe that putting a window in there and saying, hey, this is something we're interested in is a wise choice and something we should pursue.
Representative Cannoli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
She asked for it.
I just have a question about this, because I don't think in the bill, I don't see anything where it says what it will cost to get this implemented. So I know there's got to have to be a depository, some kind of deal with that, how that's all going to work, and what that would cost the state initially to move this idea if it were to pass. What's it going to cost us?
Representative Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To answer one of the last questions, it is usually less than 0.25% for storage fees. So if we try to go to a depository, that's what it would cost for that. My biggest concern with what we're debating here is the lack of diversification with our investments. We have chosen to put all of our eggs in one basket, and that's the US dollar. And so if we had stuck with the constitutional, with the Constitution and backing our money and currency through precious metals, we'd be able to buy the same amount of things that we were, and it's basically inflation proof. So for instance, back when fuel was 20 cents a gallon, do we wish that fuel was 20 cents a gallon today? Absolutely. But if you take the dimes they used back then to buy those 20 cents, it was 90% silver. And those 2 dimes would be able to buy about $5 worth of gas today. And so I think it's more than inflation proof based on the trajectory of what we're doing here. So on and for the bill. Thank you.
Representative Bratton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not going to ask you to raise your hands and say how many of you have gold in your portfolios, but I happen to know it is a lot of you. Just ask your seatmate. On and four.
Representative Larson?
Mr. Chairman, I think, I think if we would take time as we contemplate this bill, if we would just maybe set it aside and go over and sit down in the treasurer's office and look at the diversification of the investments that we have. We just heard that this is to help us diversify. That's their whole job, is not to put all our eggs in one basket, whether it be bonds and the other investments that they have. They can and have had gold when it's been appropriate, but to think that this somehow, this 10 million, makes this huge impacts on the diversification of our portfolio, I think maybe without a lot of substance there. I think that they do a great job, and again, I agree with the last speaker. I think a lot of us do have gold in our portfolios, but who's to say that the state hasn't and doesn't and won't again? Let them do their job. Thank you.
Representative Kelly?
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Part of this bill is also talking about allowing the state to begin accepting gold and silver as a payment. That's a wise decision right there, if we're not allowed to do that right now. I just want to bring one thing back here about the financial experts. The good representative is correct. They do their job well, and if gold was a good investment, they would have already purchased it. But their incentive is to get the best rate of return for the state. Their job is not to guard against economic collapse. That's kind of what we're talking about doing here. That hedge, that small, maybe 1% of our wealth being in something substantive like this, not for the best return, but in case it does hit the fan. So again, financial experts are not going to invest in gold because it is not a good rate of return, and their job is to get us the best rate of return. That's why it may be a good idea for us to step in and say, let's just sock a little bit away here. We're not going to get a great return on it, but it's a safety belt.
Representative Nicholas?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I could stand at this mic all day. I've been involved in our investment portfolio since 2005. Back then, we were making almost less than inflation. We have been readjusting how we finance, or what we can finance in and how we do it almost every year since then. And we've gone from a bond state to an investment portfolio that last year made us 14%. I mean, we've made incredible, tremendous strides. And it's saving the state right now as we're heading for a decline. 30% we're talking about that we fund through our investment portfolio, 10 years ago was 5%. That's what we've done. And it's rather remarkable. And we've gone from an investment team of 1 or 2 to now about 40. And all they do is work for us with an incredibly diversified portfolio. Right now, we have over $4 billion invested in securities that hedge against the dollar, that are non-dollar investments because of the discussions we just had from our last speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, we are there. We are more sophisticated than you can imagine. And every time we have this conversation, the conversation is not, is gold right or wrong, or long-term or short-term? It's all of the above. They meet on a monthly basis, literally, and consider gold and whether to buy it. And by the way, you don't have to buy bullion. You can buy gold on the market. And that's the way our good folks at State Retirement is. So and the 30 billion, by the way, is really not an accurate number. We have about 11 billion under investment. The state retirement has about 4 billion under investment. And they use their gold market as a hedge to keep up and behind the dollar. That's what they do. So this is a sophisticated world. And all of those folks that work there are smarter than we are. And if they thought this was a good idea, they would say so. Both retirement and our good friend of the Treasury said this is not a good idea. On and against.
Representative Tarver?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I was just doing some fun math, just messing around, because the number 14 came up 14 years ago. They've been working on this. So I went back 14 years ago, gold was $444.84 an ounce. If we would have purchased $10 million of it, put it in our piggy bank, we would have $65 million. Therefore, if we would have done $100 million at that time, we'd have $650 million. This isn't something you buy to make dividends. This is something you would buy to hedge against inflation over time. And this small amount of money, I don't think we're trying to take this from the investment team. This would be something that we just want to have protection against inflation. You know, is it gonna go higher? I don't know. I'm very good at buying high and selling low. I was born and raised to do it that way, but over long periods of time, it's, you know, gold is a sound investment. And this modest amount, honestly, look at the numbers we play with. 10 million is a very small amount, and maybe we would lose it all. That would be normal for myself, but who knows? Maybe it'll go higher. On and for.
Representative Pendergraft?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Previous speaker stole some of my thunder, but I wanted to emphasize something there. Yeah, compared to the 30 billion, and that number comes from the state treasurer, 10 million is a drop in the bucket. We all know that. We're not kidding ourselves. But what is intriguing about me is that it doesn't pay dividends, which means it's harder to spend. And I'm all about slowing down spending.
Representative Allamond?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Folks, look down at that garbage can sitting beside your desk. You could put $10 million worth of gold in it. Don't take much room for gold. And $10 million is 0.00033 of what we have. It's not very much that we're asking for, just a little drop in that. Oh, maybe we'll fill that garbage can, but nothing more. That's all I'm asking. Let's fill a garbage can.
Representative Lane?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to remind this body that it is our job to control the purse strings, and thus it would be our job to give a directive, and I think we should do that. And P.S., the gold back is the most popular dollar in my wallet because it's quite literally backed with gold.
Representative Nicholas, are you looking for? Go ahead, please.
So I know you're not listening. So I'm gonna say this again. Equities have outperformed gold in one year, 5 years, 10 years, 30 years. You pick it, it outperforms. We have made 1,534% on equities versus gold in the last 30 years. So if my numbers, if you don't listen to the numbers, listen to the experts. If they were going to invest in gold, and actually, once again, the retirement folks do, but they only do it on the short term. They buy, sell, because gold is so volatile, 3 times more than the Standard & Poor's. So that's the way you make money on the short term. You don't, and you have never made money on the long term compared to the stock market with gold.
I see a committee of the whole amendment has popped onto the screen. Representative Wasserberger, do you wish to present that?
Thank you, Committee Chair. I had an idea to also include that we do 1 million in Bitcoin, but just at this time being, I'm going to withdraw my amendment.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Question having been called. All those in favor of Chairman Baer's motion that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, that it does so with the recommendation that Senate File 96 do pass. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. No. Senate File 96 has passed the Committee of the Whole. The majority floor leader, please.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Committee of the Whole rise and report.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, say no. Motion is adopted.
Ready? Reading clerk, will please read the Committee of the Whole report.
Mr. Speaker, your committee Committee of the Whole, having had under consideration bills on general file, begs leave to report as follows. Senate File 62, do pass amended. Senate File 73, do pass amended. Senate File 80, do pass. Senate File 77, do pass amended. Senate File 131, do pass. Senate File 78, do pass. Senate File 96, do pass amended. Representative Chestick, Chairman.
I move the adoption of the Committee of the Whole report.
I've heard the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed, no. Congratulations, Representative Chestick. Thank you very much, sir. Here. Okay, standing committee reports.
Senate File 72, sponsored by Senator Brennan. Summer Vacation Preservation Act, an act relating to education. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 4, Education, moves referred Senate File 72, Summer Vacation Preservation Act. Respect the report, same back to the House with the recommendation that do pass. Ayes, Representatives Andrew, Bratton, Guggenmoss, Kelly, Singh, Strzok. Noes, Representatives Lawley, Williams. Excused, Representative Erickson. Representative Andrew, Chairman. Senate File 88, sponsored by Natural Resource Funding. 2025 Large Project Funding, an act relating to Wyoming Wildlife and Natural Resource Funding Act. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 6, Travel, Recreation, Wildlife, Cultural Resources, to whom is referred Senate File 88 engrossed, 2025 Large Project Funding. Respect the report, same back to the House with the recommendation that do pass. Ayes, Representatives Byron, Campbell, Connolly, Harshman, Jarvis, Provenza, Storer, Thayer, Wharf. Representative Byron, Chairman. This bill was re-referred to Committee Number 2, Appropriations. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 2, Appropriations, to whom is referred Senate File 88 engrossed, 2025 Large Project Funding. Respect the report, same back to the House with the recommendation that do pass. Ayes, Alaman, Angelos, Baer, Haroldson, Pendergraft, Sherwood, Smith. Representative Baer, Chairman. Senate File 137, sponsored by Senator Dockstader. School Finance, Cash Reserves, an act relating to school finance. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 4, Education, to whom is referred Senate File 137, School Finance, Cash Reserves, respectfully report, same back to the House with the recommendation that do pass. Ayes, Representatives Andrew, Bratton, Guggenmoss, Kelly, Lawley, Singh, Williams. Noes, Representative Strzok. Excused, Representative Erickson. Representative Andrew, Chairman. Senate File 195, sponsored by Senator Beitman. Small Business Emergency Bridge Loan Program, an act relating to emergency loan programs. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 9, Minerals, Business, and Economic Development, to whom is referred Senate File 195 engrossed, Small Business Emergency Bridge Loan Program, respectfully report, same back to the House with the recommendation to do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Campbell, Heiner, Knapp, Larson, Lawley, Schmid, Tarver, Weber. Excused, Representative Reagans. Representative Heiner, Chairman.
Messages from the Senate.
Message number 282. Mr. Speaker, House Bill 23, Surrender Driver's License Repeal. The House bill listed above passed on third reading in amended form as follows by the vote indicated. Ayes 29, noes 2. The Senate respectfully asks the House to concur by adopting the listed amendments. Message 283. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading by the vote indicated. House Bill 25, Vehicle Accident Reporting Amendments. Ayes 31. Message 284. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading by the vote indicated. House Bill 27, Disabled Parking Windshield Placards Revisions. Ayes 29, noes 2. Message 285. Mr. Speaker, House Bill 54, Chancery Court Judges, District and Circuit Court Assistants. The House bill listed above passed on third reading in an amended form as follows by the vote indicated. Ayes 31. The Senate respectfully asks the House to concur by adopting the listed amendments. Sincerely, Ellen Thompson, Senate Chief Clerk.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Reading Clerk. One other thing, any committee announcements? Representative Byron.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the reminders all week to do this. Your committee number 6, Travel, Recreation, Wildlife, Cultural Resources, meet Tuesday, February 18th upon noon recess to hear Senate File 4 and Senate File 179, noon recess on Tuesday.
Thank you, Representative Byron. Representative Chairman Locke. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your committee number 3, Revenue, will meet on Tuesday morning at 8 o'clock in the Extension Room 5, and we will listen to 2 bills, Senate File 153, Residential Real Property Taxable Value, and Senate File 61, Pollution Control Property Tax Exemption Applicability. Thank you, Representative. Chairman Winter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your committee number 5, Agriculture, will meet on February 18th, Tuesday, at 7:30 in the morning in room 3 in the extension, and we will discuss Senate File 82, Senate File 43, and Senate File 121. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Winter. Chair Bear, are you there? Or?
Mr. Speaker, your committee number 2 will be taking Tuesday morning off.
Wow. Congratulations. Okay, any other committee announcements? Seeing none. One last announcement for you, ladies and gentlemen. Meeting notices for Tuesday are due by 2 p.m. today. That's passed. Just letting you know. You're too late if you're doing it now. Anybody feel inspired to go do something? Don't worry about it. That ship has sailed. Okay, that clears the deck. Mr. Majority Floor Leader, whenever you're ready.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. It's been a pleasure to be here this week. I move that the House adjourn until Tuesday, whatever day that is of the month, but it'll be at 10 o'clock a.m.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed, no.
The House will stand adjourned until 10 a.m. on the 18th day of February, 2025. 10 a.m. Thank you for reminding me. May all of you have a safe trip home. If you're going home, be very careful and keep in mind those folks that are having a hard time right now, and those folks over there in that Green River country. A lot of things we can be praying for. If you're praying people, please keep doing that. Thank you. You have a wonderful and blessed weekend.